Thank you very much for staying with us right here on PM News. Wage negotiations in the gold mining sector will begin tomorrow in Johannesburg. The National Union of Mineworkers is demanding at least 50% increase for entry-level employees, while the AMCU wants a 12,500 rands minimum wage for entry-level workers. AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa has warned the Chamber of Mines that it faces what he calls massive industrial action in the gold and coal sectors. He says this if it doesn't come up with a tangible result within 2 weeks after the start of the wage talks. AMCU has also asked for a medical aid scheme that will also cover workers' families and for pension funds for all its members to be released to a new fund called Gwala, established for its members. The NUM, on the other hand, says its demands are legitimate as lower paid workers earn as little as 5,000 rands a month. They say the threat of high wage demands being linked to job losses doesn't scare them. Well, to talk about the issues around the mining industry, we are joined in the studio by Gwala, who is mining tax analyst, and he joins us right here on PM News. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's start first by talking about your opinion regarding the demands that I've just talked about. AMCU wants 12,500, NUM wants an increase of 50% on their entry-level workers. Do you think that these demands are reasonable?
In my view, it's not about them being reasonable or not. You've got two parties who are looking after different interests. The mining workers are looking at changing the history in relation to the mining industry, whereas the mining companies are faced with a number of challenges, of which one of them is commodity prices that currently are low, and they impact directly on the profits. So you've got mining workers with their demands, of which they're not going to change. So we're happy that the minister this time around is involved right at the beginning of the negotiations rather than coming in at the later stage. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, through the negotiations, we hope that they will come up with something that will please all parties.
Well, most of the time you get that management would say they do not afford the wage demands, whereas unions refuse to budge. Let's look at the contribution of the mining industry then, because according to the stats, we hear that they were contributing 21% into GDP, and right now it has dropped to 8%. Looking at the trend, what has contributed to this decline?
If you look at the mining industry history, you'll see that it's a trend. It picks up together with the commodity prices, and then at some point, the prices will drop. So unfortunately now, the prices have dropped, and the mining workers are still pushing for the history to be addressed in relation to the benefits. So what we're seeing is they're not going to stop. So the mining companies have to also take into account the mining workers' demands, because you don't want a situation like we've had last year where negotiations took about 5 months, and that impacted directly to the economy as a whole, because as you understand that 60% of our exports in the country come from this sector. So if that doesn't happen for, say, 5 months, we're impacted as a country. So hopefully we're not going to have a situation where they go on forever like they've done last year.
Looking at the sentiment towards South Africa regarding labor instability, foreign direct investment would in one way or the other be affected, because we hear some investors want a stable labor environment. Do you think that the current developments in the mining industry would actually have an impact on the way forward for the mining industry? Because you know that unions want the interests of the workers to be looked after, but investors also want to protect their profits.
I think if you look at the mining industry in general, it's not an attractive investment for the investors as a whole, whether you look at South Africa or you look at other countries. But in South Africa, unfortunately, if you look at since 2002, we've had a new legislation that governed the mining industry, and that is still going through the changes. We understand that the president took back the latest changes that were proposed, and we're still waiting for the final legislation. So we are in a process where the legislation which impacts this industry keeps on changing. And that's got a direct impact on the investor, because you'll understand that mining is a long-term investment.
What is your view then, sorry to interrupt you, because many people are saying that perhaps South Africa could have been snubbed by the recent development where BHP Billiton launched South 24, and the headquarters are based in Australia, whereas we are only a secondary listing here at the JSE. So does that actually indicate the direction of the sentiment towards South Africa?
I'll view that differently. To have, I'll make an example with a company called Sibanye. Goldfield unbundled Sibanye, and if you look at how Sibanye is currently trading, it's a positive story, because that resulted in a company that is managed and controlled in South Africa, with their profits going up. So we expect with this new company that has been formed, because it's a similar concept where the headquarters is going to be in South Africa, management is going to be in South Africa. So in terms of funding the overhead costs in relation to your headquarters, it's not going to happen, because everything will take place in South Africa. So we expect positive results from that restructuring.
Okay, give us your opinion regarding the volatility of the rands as the commodity prices have gone down now. The rand dramatically just dwindled against the dollar since last week on Friday. At the moment, 12 rand 39. What do you think is the trajectory of this decline caused by?
In the mining sector, it impacts them differently. You have to look at a company that is procuring their goods offshore, so they import. So that's a negative impact, because the cost of procuring the goods is going to be more expensive. But for a company that is exporting their commodities, it's an upside, because they tend to then realize more when the dollar is strong. So you have to look at, it doesn't affect all mining companies the same way.
All right. Thank you so much for giving us your perspective.
Okay.
All right, I'm speaking there to Alex Gwala, who is a mining techs analyst, and of course talking to us right here on PM News. Now, one of the unions